If you've ever been stuck procrastinating on a design brief because you may have woken up that day and you're just a little bit off, you're not thinking very creatively, or the actual brief itself just may not inspire you. There was nothing in it that gave you immediate ideas, lots of vague or complex topics. Well, this might be for you because I had an experience recently where the brief didn't inspire me at all, at least not initially. So this is the brief I got. And theoretically, most designers would actually get pretty excited given that this was designing some graphics for a t-shirt. Who doesn't love illustrating and designing nice typography for a t-shirt? So this is actually a nice brief. It was for the early learning sector, and you'd probably think, well, that should inspire you. You can use lots of cartoon characters and bright colors. That'd surely appeal to that industry. And yeah, that's true. But some of the topics that I had to deal with were a little more complex, like, building resilience and emotional regulation, learning and discovery. There was lots of complex ideas in there. But the one thing I did do to reset my design thinking and kick off the design process effectively and not get stuck into this pressure of, oh, I've got to deliver by the deadline, was going back to the brief and picking out the keywords in the brief that would initiate my brainstorming and research off. And from there, I could then sketch the basic ideas that would become my later creative direction. So that was it, going back to the brief and highlighting the keywords that would lead to the brainstorming and research and creative discovery. So in this example, I was actually given the slogan that was to appear on the t-shirt, and that probably had everything that I needed, but I probably didn't see it at first. And the slogan itself was "The future starts with us," because the focus was on early educators as having the most impact into a child's development. They have all the responsibility of helping that child grow and setting them on the best path for the future. So this was a celebration about the educators. But I didn't want to just have, a happy, smiling adult with a few kids' faces around them. I didn't want it to be human and too literal. I wanted to inject personality into this without having to rely on human figures, faces. And I thought, well, maybe I can inject personality into objects and shapes that could or would reflect the personality and skills that educators bring to the centers and bring to the children. For example, that could have been done through, a thumbs up or a love heart or a flower or a pencil or a computer or a book or a musical instrument. If I used those and built caricatures into them, they could effectively be the skills and environment that the educators build for the children. So they become my caricatures and my personality instead of using a human face. So that was where my thinking was going. And then I also started to think of, aside from that idea, was maybe there are metaphors that I could use to relay this concept of a future starting with the educators. For example, I thought of using a mother and ducklings, the little ducklings happily following the mother duck as she guides them into the future, wherever they're going. So that would also kind of, in a very simple way, depict the role that educators have on the children. Or perhaps I had various shapes. They could be a square, a triangle, a circle, a star, and they each had a personality of their own, a personality that represented the personality of the educators. For example, one was a superhero. One could be, a superhero because they do so much and they're like powering on, leading the kids and managing the center. Another one could have sunglasses on because it just shows that they have a very calm approach to educating the kids. Or another one could be holding a telescope because they're into exploration and adventure, and that also is a great attribute to share with kids. And so on and so forth. Basically, different personality types that would introduce kids to a range of experiences to help them grow and develop. So I was trying to think of this brief in abstract ways, but the only way I got to this point was by going back and looking at the brief and just focusing in on one or two ideas that were in the brief. It really just focused on the slogan and the educators themselves. And I wanted to depict the educators as happy, positive, uplifting, encouraging, and educational, so that people looking at the t-shirt would get a warm feeling and response from the visual. So I shared all the concepts with the client. They picked one, we refined it with a few minor changes, and it's now gone into production on hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and a whole range of promotional items for an event later in the year. But what I really wanted to highlight in this process was that when you're stuck creatively, always go back to the brief, read it, pick out a few points or messages and keywords that will help you start brainstorming, researching, and sketching ideas from that will end up in your design solution. And your client will thank you for that much more quickly and efficiently because they'll see that your concepts are actually directly tied to the brief. It's not like you've just read it and spun off on your own tangent and created whatever you want. These briefs can be creative, particularly on a t-shirt. You can design whatever you want really, but when it's tied to the brief and you've thought about the keywords in that brief, your solution is going to be much more on point. So if you have experiences like this, you'd love to share in the comments, that'd be great. Otherwise, it'd be amazing to get a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next time.